before I even get into the arguments for the existence of God, there's two fundamental principles of logic that I want to make sure I point out, okay? The first one's going to be the law of non-contradiction, right? And the second one's going to be the law of causality, okay? These two, okay? I'm going to repeat a lot of it. The first one's going to be the law of non-contradiction, okay? Law of non-contradiction, I'll explain that in a moment. And the second one's going to be the law of causality, okay? Two essential principles, right? We use these two principles daily, constantly to communicate with each other, okay? Constantly. And if you're talking with an atheist or a skeptic about anything, and if they deny any one of these principles, it's clear. It's clear that they're not necessarily interested in truth. They're just ready for a debate if you're denying these, right? So I'll explain the law of non-contradiction first. The law of non-contradiction simply says that a thing X, I don't know if you can move that, but a thing X, so if this is a thing that's X, cannot be X and not X at the same time and in the same sense. A thing, X, cannot be X and not X at the same time and in the same sense, right? So essentially what that's saying is truth cannot be contradictory. Truth cannot contradict itself, okay? Okay, think about it this way. You got a foreign exchange student, right? Foreign exchange student comes to America. Pick a country, any country. Africa. I don't know if I can do an African accent. Foreign exchange student comes from Africa. He's walking through the mall. He says, sees two kids. He's like, hey, can I ask you a question? That's more Jamaican than anything. Okay, Jamaica. Can I ask you a question to the two kids? Who is the president of the United States? Okay, the one kid, Jack. Let's call him Jack. Jack says, yeah, the president of the United States is Donald Trump. Donald Trump's the president of the United States. His buddy's sitting next to him. Donald Trump's not the president of the United States? What are you talking about? Jamaican guy says, thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate it. But wait a second. What was cleared up? One guy said this. The other guy said pretty much the negation of what he said. He said Donald Trump is the president. The other guy says Donald Trump is not the president. Both of these statements cannot be true at the same time. One is the negation of the other. Okay? Here's a story. Okay? I like this story. Follow along. One bright day in the middle of the night, two dead soldiers began to fight. That's odd. Okay. Back to back, they faced each other. They pulled out their swords and then they shot each other. Now there was a deaf policeman close by. He heard the noise. Will you believe this? He shot those two dead boys, right? Well, and okay, if you don't believe that this lie is true, okay, you can ask the blind man. He saw it too. Doesn't make sense, right? What do we got? We got a blind man who saw something, okay? A deaf man who heard something, okay? And we've got a true lie. Doesn't make sense. Truth cannot be contradictory. X cannot be X and not X at the same time and in the same sense. That's the law of non-contradiction. And I'll repeat this over and over. Again, these two principles are key to what I'm going to talk about as far as the arguments. Law of causality, okay? Now, the law of causality is sort of an extension of the law of non-contradiction. And what it means is every effect has a cause, okay? Law of causality is every effect has a cause. This statement, law of causality, is what is known to be an analytically true statement. It's analytically true. What does that mean? That means it's true by definition. Why? What that means is if you take a statement, okay, and you analyze the relationship of the words to each other and what they actually mean, it becomes certain that is truth regardless of any outside information. Let me give you an example. The statement, all unmarried men are bachelors, okay? All unmarried men are bachelors. That's analytically true. It's true by definition. Why? If you take a look at the word bachelor, okay, you're analyzing the words in the statement. The word bachelor means, by definition, an unmarried man. So when you put that word in that statement and say, all unmarried men are bachelors, that statement is necessarily true, right? You don't need any other information to confirm the truth of that statement, right? By definition, that is exactly right. So it's the same thing with the law of causality. Every effect has a cause. What does the word effect mean? Well, right? Effect means the result of a cause. That's an effect. What does cause mean? To bring about an effect. To bring about an effect. So when someone says every effect has a cause, that statement is analytically true. You don't need any more information to confirm that it is true. It's true by definition. Okay? That's the law of causality. Bottom line on that. If a person can establish that an effect, that there's an effect, if a person can establish that a thing is an effect, right, then necessarily you can be certain that that effect has a cause associated with it. Okay? I'll repeat that. For any effect that a person finds, they have also necessarily established that there is a cause associated with that effect. Now let's get into the arguments. That's the law of non-contradiction and the law of causality. So, I'm going to be presenting the arguments for a theistic reality, which means a reality in which God exists, okay? I'm going to be focusing primarily on the origin of the universe, okay? Are there any bad arguments for the origin of the universe? I'm sure there are, but I won't be using any today. Contradiction. Oh, and by the way, I want to point out, no one argument will ever answer every single question about the existence of God, right? You know, so it's important to familiarize yourself with many different arguments to answer the different, objections that you might get. No one argument will ever answer every single question. And, okay, for the sake of time, let's assume that the universe actually does exist, okay? And it's not just some illusion, right? Because there are people out there who think that universe is an illusion, like we're just, some kind of brain in a vat somewhere being experimented on by a mad scientist, right? Making us believe that what we see and all this stuff is just an illusion. So let's just assume, and without argumentation, that the universe actually exists and it's not just an illusion, okay? And by the way, by universe, I mean all space, all time, and all matter. By universe, I mean all space, all time, and all matter, okay? Atheist. So we're going to have a conversation with an atheist. Atheist says, hey, you believe in God, don't you? That's how they talk usually, right? Hey, you believe in God, don't you? Yeah, I believe in God. Huh. What's your problem? God doesn't exist. Oh, okay, God doesn't exist, no problem. Here's what you ask the guy. God doesn't exist? Mr. Atheist, have you ever wondered why anything at all exists? Why there is something rather than nothing? Why is there something rather than nothing? And here's why that question is relevant, okay? There's a German philosopher by the name of Leibniz, okay? Leibniz argues that anything that exists has an explanation for its existence. Anything that exists has an explanation for its existence, okay? Either A, by the necessity of its own nature, meaning that it's self-existent, right? It cannot not be. Okay, here's a funny. Okay, like my son, you give my son a glass of water, a glass of Kool-Aid, anything, right? He cannot not drop it. It's in his nature to drop whatever he's got. That's just what he does. So that just peeves me. It's annoying. So, 2, it has to be caused by something outside of itself, some kind of type of external cause that has caused that thing to be. So the 2 explanations are either A, that the thing exists by the necessity of its own nature, self-existent, or it was caused by some type of external force or something, okay? Now the atheist should, according to his worldview, be able to account for why, not only why the universe exists, but also why there is something rather than nothing. He should be able to account for that. So what if the atheist says this, okay? Why is there something rather than nothing? That's easy. Self-creation. The universe created itself, right? Universe, okay, no problem. Universe created itself. Let's analyze that. And when he says the universe created itself, right, what he's saying is that the universe is its own effect as well as its own cause. Again, what he's saying is the universe is its own effect as well as its own cause to be self-created. But think back. Think about what we said about a statement being analytically true. It also works in reverse. What does that mean? The statement that the universe is self-created is analytically false. Why? Because just looking at the relationships of the words and what they mean in that statement, it's clear that there's a contradiction. Okay? Here's why. For something to create itself, okay? For something to create itself to be its own effect as well as its own cause, it would have to exist before it ever even existed. In order for something to be its own effect as well as its own cause, it would have to exist before it ever existed, okay? The universe would have to be and not be at the same time in the same sense. It would have to be X and not X at the same time and in the same sense. But we've already seen that that's absurd. Doesn't make sense. That's logically impossible, okay? Both of these, so for example, here's what he's saying. The universe exists, A. The universe does not exist, not A. Both of these statements cannot be true. Why? Truth cannot be contradictory, okay? Oh, and by the way, R.C. Sproul, if you're into reading, has a book. He's passed away. Was that last year he passed away? He has a book called Defending Your Faith. Now, in this book, he says this. He says, and I'm going to paraphrase it. If there was ever a time when there was absolutely nothing, really nothing, no time, no God, no space, no matter, I mean, absolutely nothing, what could there possibly be now? After all, ex nihilo, nihil fit. Out of nothing, nothing comes. Out of nothing, nothing comes. And the only way that you can get something out of nothing is how? Is if you equivocate on the word nothing. That's the only way. And to equivocate means you change the meaning of a word in the middle of an argument. Okay, it's a logical fallacy. Okay, and I'll explain how that works. My son, right? And I'm going to use him a lot because he's a character. My son, he goes to school, right? He goes to school, he comes home and I say, hey, buddy, how was school today? Good, great. Okay, good. I like that answer. What'd you learn? What'd you learn today? What does he say? If you got kids, you know. Nothing. I learned nothing. You learned nothing? Holy smokes. Do I need to write a letter to the school? What? You were there all day. In the last 5 years, all you can say is you learned nothing? That's a problem. I'm going to write a letter, right? But then he comes home a week, 2 weeks, whatever, with a test score. I look at the test. Hey, buddy, you passed the test. You did excellent on your test. What does that tell me? That tells me that when he says nothing, I learned nothing, what he really means is he learned something, but he's using the word nothing to describe something. He's using the word nothing to describe something. Nothing is not the same as something. That's the only way you can get something out of nothing, right? Which is a logical fallacy. It doesn't work. It's logically impossible. So, if absolutely nothing exists, the only explanation on how you could have anything or why anything exists now would be self-creation. If there's nothing, self-creation. But as we've seen, the position of being self-created doesn't make sense. It's unreasonable, wildly unreasonable. Okay? That's the only way you could. So, Mr. Atheist, the universe can't be self-created, but it exists. So now it becomes rationally, logically necessary that there be something that exists that is not only first cause, but also uncaused. Okay? There must be something that has always existed in order for there to be something rather than nothing. Okay? So that was rationally necessary for there to be something that is what? Self-existent. Okay.